Hey everybody, it's Will Wallace here. Thank you for tuning into our first episode of the Critcast with the Critcast. Just before we get started, I did want to preface this by saying on our first recording here, we did have a few issues with the internet connection, causing a few jumps and cuts here and there. Hope it's not too distracting for you. We have addressed it in subsequent episodes up to this point. And I also do want to acknowledge our video and audio quality isn't obviously professional by any means at this stage. We are just doing these over Skype calls with our friends also in lockdown. But I hope you can still enjoy it and learn a bit more about the people who make it happen. So without any further ado, here we go. Hi there. Okay, welcome everyone to the first inaugural episode of the Critcast with the Critcast. With Mikel. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Not doing too bad at all. And I should also say, Critcast with the Critcast. Thank you to Matt Miles for that delightfully obtuse name. I'm sure we'll see him on a later episode. Yeah, for anyone watching this anytime significantly after the record date, this is during lockdown, if that wasn't obvious. So I will start by asking, how's that going for you, Mikel?
Lockdown is interesting. It's not. I'm not as locked down as most people. In that I am still going to work and going out into the real world, risking my life on the front line. I'm also I've just started a new training program, so that's keeping me busy. So yeah, I'm not. It's not a month of Sundays for Mikel, unfortunately.
Not much has changed for me up here because I'm normally pretty isolated in Birmingham anyway. But yeah, we're getting by. Okay, so I suppose to start, it's probably worth reminding people where you fit in the Critcast, because you have more of a sort of cameo appearance in the film, don't you?
Yeah, right. So I play, well, my name for myself, I don't think I was actually given a character name, but I dubbed myself Canadian Joe because I was wearing a Canadian tuxedo.
Oh, right.
For those that don't know, is all denim. All
Yep.
denim all day. Denim jeans, denim jacket, denim face. So I play a cameo character in a party scene, which I'm not sure where exactly it fits with the script and chronology anymore with the narrative.
What do you mean anymore?
Well,
We haven't changed
it might
anything.
have changed. It might have changed.
As the title suggests, it's kind of the centerpiece of the film, so
Cool.
be very unlucky if it was cut out. I think people are going to really enjoy that scene.
Well, I also don't want to give away any spoiler. What can I say, Will, here?
I don't think anything's too spoilery.
Am I allowed to say that I die fantastically, or
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I just posted a still from that scene for Naomi's birthday. I don't know if you saw it, actually. Who played opposite you?
Yeah.
The girl you were chatting up before things
I
took a
think
left turn.
I'll have to check it out because I'm not sure I've seen it. But yeah, it was probably some of my most graceful acting. And I really dug the party vibe that you created on set. I mean, honestly, actually, the set was amazing. In fact, give me 1 sec. I'm just going to go get something quickly. One sec.
I don't know where he's going.
So I remember when I arrived on set, like I've never been on a set like Crit. It was amazing, and I was immediately given this by the producer. I felt like talent. That sealed the deal for me. I was like, right, I'm in the right place. I'm going to be treated well. And yeah, it was just insane. There was like you had the PlayStation with Warriors set up under a gazebo in the garden.
In a slow cooker, I think. It was quite a special day. I'm glad we got a lot of behind the scenes footage of that. I think we've shared some of it, but yeah, watching that footage back, I was like, wow, that was a really special day. I think at the time I was just very stressed.
Yeah, naturally.
And I think that was something I wanted to bring up, actually, because you had another key role on screen in those scenes, which I bet you don't remember, which is when I had to do my dancing sequences. You were my biggest fan, and you really gave it 100%. Just going, look at this guy's moves. Whoa, he's blowing my mind. And
it was brilliant because, like, I remember on the day you were nervous because you had to do this dance scene.
As someone who does not ever dance.
Yeah, and also, you know, not only you're acting, but you're also directing, and you're doing a lot of camera work, and well, and everything. I mean, you're producing, you're kind of writing on the fly as well, because you know, there's changes to the script, and yeah, and so I remember you being nervous, and I remember having a word beforehand where you admitted you were a bit nervous.
Yeah, I kind of briefed the people in the gazebo, I think.
Yeah,
listen, guys, here's the deal. This is going to be awkward for you, it's going to be awkward as crap for me. So
yeah, so at the moment that it was happening, and it did start off a bit awkward, like, which I know is the style of Crit anyway.
Yeah, it kind of works for the character, obviously.
But I could feel that some of that awkwardness may have been real in you. So that's like, right, I'm gonna just be the most awkward guy in the room, and just like
it, man.
bring the energy, you know.
Just balance out my awkward chakras, basically.
I had such a great day.
It was a good time, and I did just want to say everybody did a smashing job that day. We had a lot of help from a lot of people on that shoot. It was really special. So if you were involved, thank you. There's a lot to get into here, I suppose, in half an hour. It's probably going to be one of the challenges of this format. But I thought maybe the next thing for us to talk about, which would be quite obvious given the Crit context, would be Faithless, because that's basically where Crit was born in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So, and obviously where we first met. We've worked together on, I think, 3 projects now. But that was the first one.
3 or 4, yeah. And yeah, it was amazing, actually. Faithless came about. I had just taken a job in Manchester. I was working part-time for Grimfest, which is a horror film festival up in Manchester, and they just started a distribution label. So I was out there buying content and stuff. And so I was actually living in Manchester at the time, and I got a call from Johnny Griffith, who is a legendary producer.
He's a great guy.
He's I believe now in Dubai at the moment.
Oh, really?
But he was living in Mexico for a while as well.
Yeah.
And we go way back. We used to work at language schools together. That's how we met. And
really?
Yeah, when I first moved to London, which was around, actually it was all around the same time. So because we'd worked together, I'd kind of got him more excited about film production, because he at the time was a writer when I first met him, and we did a music video together. And then Faithless came up. He got passed on Faithless by Steve McCartan, and Steve McCartan is in Crit as well, I believe.
He's another character, yeah. Everybody gets dragged in somehow.
So Steve had this script, and I'd heard of Steve around the ways. I knew he'd been involved with K-Shop, which I'd cast a few years before that, and so I'd heard a lot about him, but I'd never actually met him. And when Johnny got in touch, he sent me the script, and he asked if I wanted to second AD it. And I was at that point, because I just started this new job, I was like, yeah, you know, I would be happy to second AD it if I am introduced to the first AD, but who have you got? And Johnny didn't actually know the first AD at the time, and said that they were a student. And at this stage, I'm a few years beyond being a student. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to come on board in second AD for somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. So they're going to have to be a really good student, or you just ask me if I want to first AD it, and they can be my second.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a bit of a funny situation where I just, you know, took the initiative and was a bit ruthless in that sense. And luckily, I then, like, Johnny passed me over to Steve. I spoke to Steve, and we had a conversation, and Steve was like, nah, you're my man. Like, I'm chasing tails with this student anyway, so I can feel that you've got the right energy for it. So he brought me on board as the first, and then at that stage it was pretty close to like the shooting dates. I believe it was just a couple of weeks in advance.
We should say what the project is, by the way.
Yeah,
so sort of a cop drama with Sean Gilder. He's quite an actor of some renown. He was a lovely chap to work with, actually.
Yeah, he was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. There was a great cast. That was what really got me on board as well. It was Sean and Jack Gordon and Jake Davis, fantastic actors. All 3 of them have got fantastic credits, performances in some really brilliant British film and TV. So yeah, I was really interested in it, and it's a really interesting script. It's kind of like noirish, but set in a seaside town like Bournemouth, and really using the landscape around us. And there was a lot of locations, and it presented a challenge in that sense. So,
Yeah.
and it really opened a lot of doors for me doing that job, because
I owe my career to it.
yeah,
So,
it certainly gave me that launching pad as well, where I was able to yeah, kind of flourish as an AD under Steve, who works as an AD as well. So it gave me a lot of tips, a lot of good advice, and yeah, and then obviously it cemented my relationship with Johnny as well, who then started bringing me on board with a lot of adverts and music videos that he was shooting up in London when I then moved to London shortly afterwards. So yeah, it was a huge huge eye opener for me. And then I remember I think it was the second or third day, because what was it? It was a 4 or 5 day shoot, wasn't it?
4 or 5, yeah.
And and I remember one of us making some silly B movie reference and the other one picking up on it, and I was like, oh, hang on. I was like, is this where the first AD and the first AC have some sort of synergy? The one time.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, you had so much energy on set. I'm sure we just sparked up a conversation at some point, but I don't exactly remember that first time we spoke. But there was so many people meeting on that shoot, because obviously, like you mentioned, they weren't opposed to having students on it, and that's when you had people like me who had no UK credits as a focus puller. You had people like Josh helping out as my trainee, and that's how me and Josh met. And obviously Faye was like, what? I imagine you brought Faye in, is that right?
Yeah, so because I'd run the BFI Film Academy for White Lantern Film whilst I was casting K-Shop, and then after I came back 2 years later from traveling, I then ran it again, and that's when I met so Faye from the Faithless team. It was Faye, Rob, and Olivia. I can't remember. Was there anybody else from the BFI Film Academy there? No, I think it was those three. Yeah, and they again, like, they just flourished in those roles.
Serious go-getters.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, Faye in particular, we both worked with so much since, and you know, that was her first time going onto a professional set, and well, I guess it was semi-professional, but the quality of the work was of a really high standard. So it didn't feel like a semi-pro set. It didn't feel like most of us weren't getting paid. It felt like very efficiently run. Yeah, so it was a great experience. I got so many funny stories from that as well. On the first day, I was wearing jeans, but we were shooting on the beach, and it was like September, I believe, but it was still fairly warm. And so I was wearing like black jeans, and I pulled them up to show off my legs, show off my calves, to get a bit of sun, and because I was just getting hot and sweaty in them.
Sure, it was hot, I remember now.
Yeah, and then by lunchtime, I couldn't pull my jeans back down over my calves. They'd like swollen up. And so I grabbed Johnny, the producer, when everybody went off to lunch. And I was like, dude, I can't pull my jeans back down. He was like, what do you want me to do about it? And I was like, I'm gonna get on the ground, and you're gonna have to pull them off, dude. Around the back of the catering van, and like he was there, like yanking them off me. It's like people were coming to lunch, like, what are these two cats doing? Absolute perverts. This first AD and producer. It was ridiculous.
That's always the way, I'm sure. Yeah, we could definitely talk a lot more about Faithless. I'm sure it'll come up on part 2 of this, which we'll get to next episode. But yeah, you did mention working on Grimfest and stuff. Did you have any stories from that at all? Because that was something, I think, when we started talking about our interest in films, and you brought that up, I was like, wow, that's super cool that you're involved with these festivals and this distribution company that's primarily like genre stuff. So.
Yeah, so Grimfest have been amazing. Simeon and Rachel, who run Grimfest, are just really close friends of mine, you know, over the years that we've got to know each other. I started working there in my final year of uni, just as like an internship. Over the course of the festival, I was kind of, you know, being a technical assistant. I QC'd all of the submissions that came in and stuff like that, and kind of ran the second screen. And then on the festival dates, they actually turned around and they were like, you know, you kind of know stuff. Do you fancy interviewing some of the guests? And I was like, cool. So all of a sudden, I was just thrown into like interviewing Pollyanna McIntosh and like Alan Ford and Ross Noble, and like, you know, some of them I was aware of some of their work, but literally I'd learn, like they'd just grab me and be like, oh, are you free? And I'd be like, yeah, yeah. And then I'd be like, where are you taking me? They're like, oh, you're going to interview another guest. And I'd be like, oh, crap. Like, quickly looking on my TV app, like, what have they done? Like,
I was nervous about interviewing you, Mikel. I couldn't deal with that pressure.
That was great. And
I'm like, remember how you fucking know this guy.
Yeah, yeah. But like the guests there were lovely, and they were so relaxed and so inviting, and it really is an amazing festival in terms of the the guests and the filmmakers, the staff and the audiences. They just hang out together. Like it's like there's no hierarchy, there's no status, there's no mystification of like that's a celebrity or whatever, you know. And I've been to so many editions of the festival, and everybody just has a party. Like, yeah, there's always somebody left standing at like 6 a.m. I believe this year it was at one point Johnny Vegas or the I'm pretty sure he was.
Say no more.
But yeah, you know, I've met so many incredible people through it. So many collaborators. When working with them, I attended the American Film Market as a delegate for the Department for International Trade. Like, it's just mad, you know. Have had such an amazing collaboration with Grimfest over the years, and they pick great movies, man. They pick great movies.
That's cool. It sounds like a really special festival, to be honest with you.
It is. Cheers to Grimfest.
Cheers. I don't know why I chose this mug.
Wow, he's scary.
So I won't explain. People can guess what that fucking mug is. But yeah, I mean, on that note, I suppose, but partly going back to your particular taste and stuff, I also probably should talk about what you do when you're not ADing and what you're doing now. Obviously, you mentioned the training, but you produced and you directed also.
Yeah. So I actually I graduated from film school, the Northern Film School in Leeds, as a director, and I started because, you know, we'd had the advent of DSLRs through when I was doing my degree. So the natural thing to do was to like go out and start being a videographer. So I started working as a videographer straight out of uni, got really sick of clients, and then pissed off traveling for like 2 years. So when I came back, I really had to reestablish myself and reconnect with people. And so that's why like Faithless and Grimfest and White Lantern Film were amazing ways to do that, because I already had established connections that brought me into those projects. But
I guess you were just trying your hand at different roles.
Yeah. I wasn't really like, whilst I'd been traveling, I always had a mind of like, you know, what film can I make along the way, and I was really, really close to shooting an ayahuasca vampire short film in the jungle in Peru, with my buddy Joe shooting it, and my cousin was going to act in it, and yeah, I was so excited. I think it's probably one of the best scripts I've ever written. And I even took like all the apparatus for like blood pumps out with me, because I randomly got a flight, like a very brief flight back through a job opportunity, and so I took all this gear back with me, and it's still there. I left it there. But yeah, no. So I graduated as a director, but yeah, and I'd done a few projects, and I won a few. Well, I didn't win anything, unfortunately, but I got into a few competitions and finalist in competitions when I was finishing university. But then I kind of turned my hand, because, you know, trying to make a living out of it as a freelancer, you know, it's quite a different endeavor, and you realize that, you know, it's not just about telling stories, it's about operating professionally on a set and working with a whole team and a whole crew in your dedicated and very, very specialized role, you know. Once I'd started freelancing after I'd moved to London and stuff, I realized that, yeah, you know, the film and arts industry is so broad. So I was actually doing a lot of stage management and stuff when I first started. Yeah. And working events as well. Still involved with theatre and film, but more events, film festivals, stuff like that. So that was really where, you know, the producing side kicked in. Obviously, I was running on a lot of adverts as well. and it just seemed more of a natural progression. And then came to a point, I think I'd been freelancing for about a year, where I was like, okay, what if I actually try and produce a thing? Because I'd never produced anything on my own that hadn't been something that I directed and probably written. You know, I'd always had a hand, even if I had another producer in producing, but I'd never tried to produce for somebody else. So that's
a very different thing, isn't it? Because oftentimes when you're a starting filmmaker, you kind of produce because you have to.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I wanted to have a bash at that. So I did a music video with a local writer director called Jamie Milligan, and we made it very low key, and it was, you know, a commissioned music video. I mean, we only had 300 quid, if you could call that a commission, but we did really well out of it. And, you know, from a producing capacity, it was, you know, it was just producing the shoot, producing the prep, producing the shoot, producing the post. That was, you know, that was the package, and then we delivered it to the client, done. And then by this point, I was kind of feeling more ambitious. So Jamie sent me a couple of scripts in the meantime that I hadn't been able to do. And then he sent me one called, well, it was at the time called The Dinner. And then it became The Charade. And finally, it became Mausoleum. And it was basically a monologue from a middle-aged woman as she sits down with her partner, explaining to him why she hated his guts and she felt trapped, and she knew this was her last chance to save herself from living in a mausoleum with him. So that just really, really, really rang true to me, not least because it really recalled an incident that happened to me when I was 19. And I was selected to be on a jury for the One World Media Awards for the Children's Rights Film Award, or not, sorry, Children's Rights Media Award category. It wasn't exclusively film, it was documentary, radio, and written media. And so when I was invited to the awards ceremony, I was sat next to a very famous actress from the 90s called Greta Skarkey. And she, I don't want to shine a bad light on her. She was an amazing, beautiful, hilarious woman. And she'd had a couple of drinks, and she was explaining to me as a 19-year-old filmmaker that when she had had a child and stopped, or let's say started becoming more vocal in her refusal of advances made by producers, sexual advances, that she had lost all her work, and nobody was willing to hire her anymore. Like, this was 2 years before the Me Too and Time's Up movement, and I was really struck. And she was appealing to me, being like, find me a good role. Like, you're a young filmmaker. Like, you must have something. There must be a role for me out there. And at the time, I felt completely incapacitated to help her. And I was like, damn, I wish I could, because this is an amazing actress that, I would love to work with. And she seems like such a fun, authentic, honest, and, like, wily woman, And I didn't have it. And when this script landed, like 10 years later, whatever, or maybe a little less than 10 years later, I was like, damn, this is the script I wish I'd had for Greta Skarkey that Jamie had written. And so we went about producing that, and we were pretty firm that we wanted to shoot on, well, we got Chris Ferguson involved, who had a shot.
Fantastic DP. Amazing
DP. And he was pretty firm that he wanted to shoot on 35mm, which I really, really vibed with, because of the kind of the story about it being about middle age, but also it's a universal story, but it felt like a time capsule, shooting on 35mm. It made it feel, older, more authentic, more rustic, and like a more age-old texture to tell this story, or age-old method of telling this story.
And of course, it's almost entirely a single shot.
Exactly. And then we had the idea of making it a oneer, and with the gag that's revealed at the end, I felt that would really work. Of course, I had to do the producerly thing, and also as an AD, and just bully Chris and Jamie and be. You need to come up with a contingency plan. I know I want it to work. I don't to have to break it up, but there has to be a contingency plan, and they were really good in being very firm about it happening, but they placated me, and that's all I needed. I just needed to be placated that we had another way of telling the same story in case, for whatever reason, you never know. Like maybe the gym was broken on the day, or the dolly. We were missing a part of the dolly that didn't get sent, and we were shooting on a Sunday. So, but yeah, it was a really lovely day. You were there, obviously.
Thanks for getting me on.
In a cameo crew role.
Yeah, it's much more of a fly on the wall on that, but it was great to have the experience of working on that. It's the only time I've actually worked with 35 to date. So working with someone like Chris and obviously Marty Mahali would also really knew their stuff. So it was like a big eye opener for me between Faithless and when my career as a focus book kind of actually took a bit more of flight, But also just the construction of the scene was so interesting with that set that was built and doing it as a one-er. I've not seen it done to that level before.
No, absolute props to Zoe Parker, who she's just come off of doing props on Killing Eve 3. And she was the production designer. It was really interesting because I caught her. I'd met her at an event whilst I was at uni. She wasn't at my uni, and we just had a really good rapport. And I'd been trying to get her on board with something for years, and she'd always spurred my intrigue by refusing me, basically, because she was busy. And then she was working for years in a prop house doing the hiring, so she was actually working on the other side of the coin industry, and so she had that job secured. And it just so happened that when Mausoleum came up, it was exactly the right timing for her, where she was like, I've been at this props house for 3 years, I'm going to leave within the next 12 months, and I want to get back into freelancing. So right now I've got the money, but I need the practice and I need a show reel. And so we were able to give her that opportunity. And she's one of my best friends now. I gotta say, she's an amazing talent, but also just an amazing person. So I was really, really glad that we got to collaborate with. I mean, I think just the whole team on Mausoleum was brilliant. We were so lucky getting everybody involved. The whole team that Chris brought on, and
Chris gave me a lift home, by the way. He's a really top chap. Yeah.
What a legend. And then down to the cast as well. We were absolutely blessed to get Julia Deakin from a lot of Edgar Wright's work and Ben Wheatley's work. She was amazing to work with, and also it was really nerve-wracking because really she's the only one with dialogue, and so we wanted to find not necessarily a non-actor. It needed to be somebody who could hold their own just on camera with her, know. But we didn't have the budget to be able to afford somebody of her caliber to just say one line. So we went about casting somebody local, and Bournemouth's a small place. So there's the usual suspects between a certain age and demographic that we could go to, but they didn't necessarily feel right for that part. And Jamie had a genius stroke at the final hour with the casting of Neil opposite Julia. And somebody came to mind who was a local teacher and dramaturge whom he had spoken to in passing about another script years before. He lived out in Wimborne, and
Shouts out Wimborne.
We called his landline, left a I called, I was doing the producer thing and being like, Jamie, don't worry, I'll handle all the negotiations and conversations, and so I left an answer phone message, and then he called me back eventually. And it was hilarious when we just went to his house to meet him, and he forgot we were coming around. So when he answered the door, he was in his dressing gown. He was like, "Who the hell are you?" We were like, we were coming to chat about the film. And he was like, "Oh shit." He was like, can you come back in 15 minutes? We were like, "Yeah, of course." And John's great. He's hilarious. So he's such a wealth of information, and he's just got this really dry sense of humor, and he had this kind of older Don Juan quality that I knew we were really looking for, especially standing up on screen with Julia, and he was perfect. So yeah, that's a little bit about Mausoleum. I don't know what else we've got time for.
Yeah, we're kind of running out of time. I did want to talk about Hole and what you're up to these days, but I
Oh, yeah.
suppose we could span that over into part two.
Well, no, that's all good. I mean, I can briefly mention Hull. So, thanks to that day that I spent on Crit, I got to meet the amazing Holly Spiller,
Mm.
who's also acting in the scene, and yeah, she just struck me as a really interesting uh, actress, not just in look but in her playability. She's got a lot of diversity because she has such a kind of like classic, Hollywood look about her
Hmm.
almost. But then she's also got this wild hair, and and she's really grounded in devising and theatre. Um, so we got to know each other over the last couple of years, and she's got her university dissertation Whole, which she was looking to adapt for screen, and so we began doing that together. So we shot a little bit of that with UDPing a couple of months ago now, literally the last weekend before the lockdown, I believe it
Literally, it was in the air, wasn't it, so to
was.
speak? It was coming down on us. But yeah, I
Yeah,
just wanted to say, like, it was when I got the call, I was obviously surprised you were asking me to DP something, but the opportunity to work with Holly again was
yeah,
so inviting because we had her on Crit in quite a small role, which just didn't even scrape the surface of what she was capable of. So
yeah.
I hadn't managed to like follow up on any more projects, obviously doing Crit stuff, or even catch up with Holly because I moved to Birmingham. So being able to work with her was a real blessing because she is just so talented. And
She's
I
brilliant.
love her work.
Yeah,
So I did
she's
really enjoy that
incredible.
shoot.
She's hilarious. Like she takes you by surprise because you expect one thing of her, and then there's just she's got so much going on,
Mm.
and so many ideas just like bursting. And
Yeah.
yeah, she's a really exciting person to work with, and so talented not only as a writer, as an actress, but as a singer. Um,
Mm. Oh
you
yeah.
and yeah, it felt like a natural call to ask you and repay that favor, and it all felt like that in a way because since I'd met her, I kept putting Holly up for auditions because I was doing a bit of casting and I would hear about castings, and unfortunately she hadn't been selected because she didn't have the show reel at that time.
Mm.
And yeah, so when it felt really natural to be like, well, what have you got? Because I want to work with you. This is why I've been trying to get you seen for these roles, is because I want us to work together, So then once we were kind of knew we were going for it, it felt like a no-brainer to ask you because you were the reason we met, and I knew you were AC-ing, and there's only one direction up, right? And it's nice to have.
Don't tell my DPs.
No, but it's nice to have the choice, on a
Yeah.
different kind of project. And it was of course smaller than the stuff that we usually work on. There was only like 7 of us, so yeah,
Yeah.
it was a
I
lot of
suppose we
fun.
should get to wrapping it up, but I guess a lot of what we
Yeah,
talked about today really speaks to, the satisfaction that comes finding the right person at the right time and bringing people back if you met along the way. And I think Crit's really built on that, and everything we've working on really speaks to that as well. So
there's a lot of weird
if
and
there's a
wonderful
lesson to
people
learn,
out there in the film
yeah.
industry. You'll meet a lot of crazy individuals.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me, Mikel. That was episode 1 of the Critcast, and Mikel will be joining me for a very special part 2 of this interview, breaking the format slightly. So I guess I'll see you there, and I've lost the internet connection, so that's perfect. Say goodbye if you can, Mikel. It's not goodbye, we'll see him soon. Oh, here he is.
Bye.
Hey, let me crit you, bitch. Let me crit you.